Today's story is, she whispered, I can't sit. Everyone doubted her until a Mafia boss found the truth. If you believe everyone deserves to be heard before being judged, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Now, let's begin today's story. Please, she whispered, gripping the edge of the table. I told you, I can't sit. The dining room went strangely quiet, yet nobody moved to help her. She had worked at Bellini's for nearly 3 years. She never complained, never arrived late, never asked coworkers to carry what she could carry herself. But tonight, something was wrong. Danielle, sit down, manager Stephen Cole ordered, pulling out a chair near the service station. Danielle's fingers tightened around the table. I can't. Stephen exhaled loudly. You've said that 4 times. A younger waiter glanced away, embarrassed for her. Another whispered, she was fine yesterday. Danielle heard him. She heard everything. I'm not asking to go home, she said quietly. I'm asking to keep standing. That only made Stephen more suspicious. You're telling me you can carry trays for 6 hours, but you can't sit in a chair? A few customers turned to them. Yes. That makes no sense. From the restaurant's darkest corner, a man lowered his coffee cup. Vincent Moretti had been watching for a minute. Conversations softened when Vincent entered. Managers remembered forgotten reservations. Everyone feared the Mafia boss. Danielle had served him twice before. Stephen pushed the chair closer. Sit for 5 minutes, then finish your section. Danielle stepped backward so quickly she struck the service cabinet. A glass fell and shattered. Several diners gasped. Enough, Stephen snapped. Either sit down or clock out. Danielle's eyes filled with humiliation. Please don't make me explain this here. That sentence changed Vincent's expression. He stood. Stephen straightened. Mr. Moretti, I apologize for the disturbance. Vincent ignored him. He stopped several feet from Danielle, careful not to crowd her. You said you can't sit. Danielle nodded. Does sitting hurt? Her lips parted, but no answer came. Vincent noticed something else, a folded clinic envelope protruding from her apron pocket. Stephen noticed it too. She brought paperwork. Vincent looked at him. Did you ask? Stephen fell silent. Danielle removed the envelope. I tried giving this to him before my shift. Her voice shook. He said we were too busy. Vincent's face hardened. What does it say? Danielle held the envelope against her chest. That's private. Vincent nodded immediately. Then you don't have to tell me. Someone had accepted her boundary without demanding proof. Danielle's shoulders loosened by a fraction. Then an older hostess hurried from the office holding Danielle's employee file. Stephen, she whispered, pale-faced. You need to see this. Stephen opened the file. His irritation vanished. What? Vincent asked. There was a medical accommodation notice delivered yesterday. Silence. Danielle closed her eyes. Stephen stared at the document. I never saw this. You signed for it, the hostess said. Don't touch anything, he said quietly. Stephen swallowed. Why? Vincent's eyes turned cold. Because if she gave you paperwork, and someone made that notice disappear, then the question isn't why Danielle refused to sit. He glanced toward the office. It's who needed everyone to believe she was lying. Stephen stared at the accommodation notice as if the paper had accused him personally. I signed for dozens of deliveries, he said. That doesn't mean I read every envelope. Danielle's expression did not change. I handed you another copy before my shift. Vincent watched Stephen carefully. And what did you do with it? Stephen's jaw tightened. I don't remember. I do, Danielle said. You folded it and put it beside the reservation book. The older hostess, Margaret Ellis, looked at the front desk. There's nothing there now. Stephen spread his hands. Then somebody moved it. Vincent glanced toward the security camera above the office corridor. Good. We won't have to guess. Stephen's face changed. Those recordings are private company property. Then preserve them for whoever has the authority to review them. Vincent's answer was calm. Nobody needs to play detective. Danielle looked at him with faint surprise. She had expected a man with Vincent's reputation to solve problems through intimidation. Instead, he was protecting the evidence. You can stand in there until we figure this out. Danielle nodded gratefully. Vincent returned to his table, but his attention remained on the office corridor. 10 minutes later, Margaret approached him. Mr. Moretti? Yes. There's something else. She placed a printed scheduling report on the table. Danielle had requested lighter duties for 3 days. Each request had been rejected through Stephen's manager account. Yet Stephen had just claimed he knew nothing about her accommodation. Vincent studied the timestamps. Who else has access to this account? Assistant manager Kyle Brennan. Across the restaurant, Kyle was nowhere to be seen. Margaret checked the kitchen. He left 5 minutes ago. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Call Danielle. When she returned, she remained standing beside his table. Nobody offered her a chair now. Do you know Kyle Brennan? Vincent asked. Danielle hesitated. He's my assistant manager. Anything else? Her silence answered first. Danielle, Margaret said gently. You don't have to protect anyone. Danielle looked at the kitchen doors. 3 weeks ago, I saw Kyle changing cash totals after closing. Stephen's face drained. Why didn't you tell me? I tried. Danielle looked directly at him. You told me Kyle had worked here 8 years, and I should stop creating problems. Stephen remembered. His eyes dropped. Vincent leaned back. What happened after that? Kyle started giving me the heaviest sections. Double shifts. Closing duties. Danielle swallowed. Yesterday, when he saw the clinic envelope, he asked how long I'd need accommodations. And you told him? Only that sitting was temporarily restricted. Stephen frowned. Why sitting specifically? Danielle's expression closed again. Vincent raised a hand. She already said that is private. Stephen fell silent. Danielle looked at Vincent. Thank you. Then Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, and turned pale. Security found Kyle. Where? Stephen asked. In the records office. Margaret looked at Danielle. He was trying to delete camera footage. Vincent stood, but Danielle spoke first. Don't confront him alone. Everyone turned to her. If he's destroying evidence, call the owner and the police. Preserve the system. Let professionals handle it. Vincent studied her with growing respect. Even targeted, she wanted accountability rather than revenge. Stephen rubbed his forehead. Danielle, I should have listened to you. She met his eyes. Yes, you should have. No cruelty. No comforting lie. Just truth. Minutes later, the restaurant owner arrived with security while police were contacted. Kyle remained contained in the records office. Then Margaret returned carrying a second document recovered from the shred bin. We found this beside the machine. Danielle recognized it instantly. Her medical accommodation form. Across the top, in Kyle's handwriting, were 4 words. Make her look unreliable. Stephen went completely still, but she was staring at another handwritten note beneath it. A date, a time, and the words final warning. Her face lost color. Vincent noticed. What is it? Danielle whispered. That's tomorrow morning. What happens tomorrow? She lifted her eyes. I'm supposed to meet the restaurant owner about the missing cash. And everyone understood why Kyle needed her discredited before sunrise. Danielle stared at the words final warning until the letters blurred. Tomorrow morning was supposed to be simple. She would meet restaurant owner Henry Wallace, show him the closing reports she had copied, and explain why thousands of dollars be disappearing from nightly cash totals. Now she understood that Kyle had spent days preparing to make sure nobody trusted her when she spoke. He wasn't trying to get me fired tonight, Danielle whispered. He was trying to make tomorrow meaningless. Vincent's expression hardened. Then tomorrow happens exactly as planned. Stephen looked uneasy. After all this? Especially after this. Vincent turned to Danielle. But only if you still want the meeting. She appreciated the wording. Not you have to. Not you should. Want. I do. Police arrived minutes later. Kyle emerged from the records office accompanied by officers, his face pale with anger. This is because of you. Danielle's shoulders tightened. Vincent took one step forward, then stopped himself. Danielle noticed. No, she said. This is because of what you chose to do. Kyle laughed bitterly. You think anyone will believe a waitress over management? The sentence hung in the room. Stephen looked ashamed. Margaret looked furious. Vincent watched Danielle. They don't have to believe me, she said. They can believe the records. Kyle's confidence flickered. Officers escorted him away. Later, after the restaurant closed, Henry Wallace arrived. He was 63, silver-haired, and visibly shaken by what security had preserved. Camera footage showed Kyle removing Danielle's accommodation notice from the reservation desk. Another recording showed him entering Stephen's office under Stephen's credentials. Digital logs connected his account activity to altered cash reports. The evidence no longer depended on reputation. Danielle, Henry said, I owe you an apology. She stood across from him in the empty dining room. I need more than an apology. Stephen looked up. Danielle continued. I reported suspicious activity. I was dismissed. Then someone retaliated against me, and when I said I couldn't sit, everyone treated my pain like an inconvenience. Her voice remained gentle. If this only changes because Mr. Moretti happened to be here, then nothing actually changes. Vincent's eyes shifted toward her. Henry nodded. What do you want? A written reporting process. Accommodation requests logged where one manager can't make them disappear. And employees should be able to report retaliation without going through the person they're reporting. Henry listened carefully. Done. Don't say done tonight. Danielle shook her head. Put it in writing. Train people. Then show us. Silence. Vincent smiled. She wanted a system that would protect the next person. Henry nodded again. Fair. Margaret approached carrying Danielle's coat. As Danielle reached for it, the clinic envelope slipped from her apron and fell to the floor. Stephen instinctively bent toward it. Leave it, Vincent said. Danielle picked it up herself. Thank you. You never owed us an explanation. Danielle looked at the envelope for a long moment. Maybe not. Her eyes lifted. But there is something you should know. She glanced toward Henry and Margaret. Not because I need to prove I was hurting. Because someone else may have been put at risk. Vincent's expression changed. What do you mean? Danielle opened the envelope. Inside was a clinic report and a photograph taken during an examination. She handed only the photograph to Henry. His face went pale. Where did this happen? Danielle answered quietly. In the restaurant's storage room. Stephen froze. Danielle pointed toward the damaged metal shelving visible in the image. 3 nights ago, one of the lower shelves collapsed while I was lifting a supply box. It struck me hard enough that the clinic told me not to sit until the swelling and bruising improved. Henry looked stunned. Was an incident report filed? Danielle's eyes moved toward Stephen. I gave one to Kyle. Henry turned to Margaret. Check the maintenance records. She opened the restaurant system on her tablet. There were 3 complaints about that shelving last month. Were repairs ordered? Yes. Margaret looked up slowly. Kyle marked them completed. Vincent's face became cold. Were they? Margaret shook her head. Then she found something else. The repair invoices were paid. Henry stared at the screen. To whom? Margaret read the company name aloud. Danielle went still. She knew it. That's Kyle's brother's company. The missing cash was only part of the problem. Kyle hadn't merely tried to discredit a witness. Someone had been injured beside equipment that the restaurant had already paid his family to repair. And for the first time, Stephen understood the terrible truth. When Danielle whispered that she couldn't sit, she hadn't been asking anyone to believe in an invisible excuse. She had been standing inside the evidence of a much larger betrayal. The restaurant's storage room looked ordinary until everyone understood what had happened there. Under the fluorescent lights, a bent metal shelf leaned toward the wall, surrounded by boxes of napkins, bottled sauces, and cleaning supplies. Vincent remained nearby, careful not to crowd her. 3 complaints. 3 documented complaints. Different employees. Stephen looked sick. I never saw them. Kyle closed every request from your account, Margaret said. Henry crouched near the damaged bracket without touching it. And his brother's company billed us for repairs that were never completed. Danielle looked at the shelf. She had twisted instinctively as a heavy supply box struck her. The clinic later confirmed significant bruising and swelling and instructed her to avoid sitting temporarily because pressure aggravated the injury. She had returned to work because standing and walking were manageable, and because missing several shifts would mean missing rent. None of that should have required public explanation. Who found you after it happened? Vincent asked. Kyle. Danielle's answer changed the room. Henry stood. He knew you were injured? Yes. Did he call for medical help? I told him I could walk. Margaret drove me to urgent care. Danielle continued. Kyle told me he would file the incident report. Stephen closed his eyes. And then he buried it. Vincent looked at the security camera mounted above the storage room door. Does that work? Margaret checked the system. It should. Henry's expression hardened. Preserve the footage. Nobody edits or downloads anything except authorized investigators and counsel. Vincent glanced at him approvingly. By then, police had requested additional records connected to Kyle's attempted deletion of footage, while Henry contacted legal counsel and the restaurant's insurer regarding the safety complaints and questionable invoices. Vincent approached with 2 cups of tea. He placed one on the ledge beside her. I wasn't sure what you drink. Danielle looked at the cup. That may be the least intimidating thing you've done tonight. A faint smile crossed his face. My reputation is collapsing. You'll survive. Their eyes held a beat too long. Neither spoke. Then Vincent said, "Why did you come back to work after getting hurt?" Danielle looked through the glass at the wet Chicago street. "Because people here rest differently when they have savings." Vincent absorbed that sentence without offering pity. "You shouldn't have had to explain your medical details to be treated with respect." "No," Danielle wrapped both hands around the tea. "But that's what bothered me most. Everybody wanted proof before they wanted compassion." Vincent lowered his gaze. Margaret hurried toward them holding a tablet. "We found the storage footage." Danielle stiffened. "Does it show the accident?" "Yes." Margaret hesitated. "But that isn't the important part." Henry joined them. Margaret played the recording. The shelf shifted. She stepped backward. The lower section collapsed. Minutes later, Kyle rushed inside. He helped Danielle to her feet, examined the broken bracket, then looked directly toward the camera. Danielle watched silently. Kyle waited until Margaret escorted her away. Then he returned alone. He removed something from the floor, placed it in his pocket, and deliberately bent the damaged bracket farther before photographing it. Henry whispered, "Why would he make it worse?" Vincent's eyes narrowed. Margaret advanced the footage. Kyle opened a nearby cabinet and removed a folder. Inside were maintenance invoices. He photographed them, replaced the folder, then made a phone call. The camera had no audio. Danielle leaned closer. "Can you enlarge the screen?" Margaret did. Kyle's phone reflected faintly in the cabinet glass. A name was visible across the display. Stephen Cole. Everyone turned to the manager. Stephen's face went white. "I can explain." Danielle's expression changed. Not angry, not frightened, disappointed. Vincent set down his coffee. "Then explain." Stephen looked at the locked front doors, then at Henry. Kyle wasn't stealing from the restaurant alone. And the man who had spent doubting Danielle was standing at the center of the truth she had been trying to expose. Stephen Cole shrank beneath the restaurant's warm lights. Hours earlier, he had stood over Danielle and demanded that she sit because her explanation didn't make sense to him. Now Henry Wallace, Margaret, Vincent Moretti, and Danielle were waiting for an explanation from him. "Kyle wasn't stealing alone," Stephen repeated. Henry's voice hardened. "Who helped him?" Stephen looked down. "I did." Margaret covered her mouth. "How?" Henry asked. "It started with invoices," Stephen said. "Kyle's brother had a maintenance company. We approved small repairs through him, inflated the bills, and split the difference." Henry stared at him. "You stole from me." "Yes." "And the shelving?" Stephen's eyes flickered toward Danielle. "That wasn't supposed to happen." Danielle's expression tightened. "That isn't an answer." Stephen swallowed. "We stopped paying for real repairs months ago. Kyle marked maintenance requests completed so nobody would ask questions." Danielle finally understood. Her injury hadn't been some unpredictable accident. The shelf had been reported. Money had been allocated. Two managers had decided their theft mattered more than employee safety. Vincent's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. This was Danielle's moment. "When I told you I couldn't sit," she said quietly, "did you know about the shelf?" Stephen's eyes dropped. "I knew there had been complaints. And you still made me explain myself in front of customers." "I was scared." Danielle stared at him. "So was I." The words landed harder than anger. Stephen wiped his forehead. "Kyle called me after the accident. He said you had copied the cash reports and were meeting Henry. He wanted to make you look unstable before you could accuse us." "And you agreed?" "I didn't know about the accommodation form." "But you knew enough." Stephen had no answer. Henry reached for his phone. "You're both terminated. My attorney will provide everything to investigators." Stephen looked at Vincent. Perhaps desperation made him forget who he was speaking to. "Mr. Moretti, please. You understand mistakes. People do things when they're cornered." Vincent's expression became unreadable. Everyone expected something frightening. Instead, he stepped aside. "You're asking the wrong person." Stephen frowned. Vincent nodded toward Danielle. "She's the person your choices hurt." Stephen turned to her. "Danielle, please." She took a slow breath. "I don't want anything bad to happen to you." Hope flashed across his face. Then she continued, "But consequences aren't the same thing as cruelty." His hope disappeared. "You endangered people. You helped steal money. You ignored me when I tried to report it. I can understand that you were afraid without pretending none of that happened." Vincent looked at her with quiet respect. She offered compassion without surrendering accountability. Police returned to speak with Stephen while Henry's attorney began preserving financial records. Danielle moved toward the employee lounge. Vincent followed at a respectful distance. When Danielle slowed, his hand moved toward the small of her back, then stopped before touching her. Do you have someone who can drive you home? Margaret usually does. Good. He paused. May I ask one question? Danielle nodded cautiously. Why didn't you leave when they started doubting you? She looked back toward the dining room. Because I knew what I saw in those cash reports. And because the next person under that shelf might have been hurt worse. Vincent absorbed the answer. Before he could respond, Henry approached holding a folder recovered from Kyle's office. Danielle, we found copies of employee complaints. He placed them on the table. There were 12. Burned hands from faulty kitchen equipment. A leaking freezer. Loose electrical wiring. The damaged shelving. Each report had been marked resolved. Danielle turned the pages slowly. None of these were fixed. Henry shook his head. We're inspecting everything tonight. Vincent looked at Stephen being questioned across the room. How much money did they take? Henry's face tightened. We don't know yet. Margaret entered carrying another ledger. I think I do. She placed it beside Danielle. Rows of payments stretched across 2 years. But one recurring transfer caught Danielle's attention. Same amount. Same date, every month. Same initials. Danielle looked at Vincent. Henry's eyes widened. Vincent stared at the ledger. That isn't me. Vincent looked directly at her. The feared Mafia boss was the one being doubted. He pushed the ledger toward Danielle. Don't believe me because of who I am. His voice remained calm. Check the evidence. Danielle studied him for a long moment. The initials VM sat on the ledger like an accusation. Waiting for courage. Earlier, Vincent had refused to make her private pain a public trial. Now he asked for the same fairness. Evidence. Where did these payments go? Danielle asked. Margaret opened the digital accounting system. Vendor account ending 4417. Henry leaned closer. Vendor name, Vanguard Maintenance. Danielle's eyes narrowed. Vincent gave a humorless smile. Not Vincent Moretti. Henry exhaled, but Danielle kept reading. Wait. She traced the recurring transfers. These aren't normal repair amounts. They're identical every month. $2,800. Even when no repairs were requested? Apparently. Vincent looked at Henry. Who approved the vendor? Henry searched the records. His expression changed. Stephen. Danielle turned another page. Several payments had been labeled emergency maintenance, yet the corresponding work orders contained no photographs, technician names, or completion reports. They created a company that sounded legitimate, she said, then used the initials to make the ledger confusing if anyone found it. Vincent studied her. Or to point suspicion somewhere convenient. Danielle looked at him. Possibly, but we don't know that yet. A faint approval crossed his face. She wouldn't accuse Stephen without evidence any more than she would accuse Vincent because 2 letters matched his name. Margaret searched state business records from the restaurant computer. Vanguard Maintenance was registered 18 months ago. She paused. Owner, Victor Brennan. Danielle's stomach tightened. Kyle's brother. Henry sat down heavily. The scheme now included false repairs, missing cash, buried safety complaints, and transfers to Kyle's brother. Vincent remained standing beside Danielle. Call your attorney, he told Henry. Have an accountant preserve everything before anyone changes another record. Henry nodded and stepped away. Danielle turned to Vincent. You could have gotten angry when we saw your initials. Would that have made me innocent? No. Then anger would have been useless. Danielle smiled. You're surprisingly reasonable for someone everyone is terrified of. Vincent's expression softened. Don't ruin my reputation. Margaret found another file. Danielle, look at this. It was an internal email sent 3 weeks earlier from Kyle to Stephen. Subject, Brooks. Danielle read silently. She has copies. If she goes to Henry, we lose everything. Stephen's response appeared beneath it. Then make sure Henry stops trusting her. Danielle's throat tightened. Vincent read over her shoulder. His face became cold. They planned this before your injury. Yes. Danielle scrolled farther. Now we have a reason. Make her look unstable. Earlier, people had doubted Danielle because they couldn't see her pain. Now they could see exactly how someone had tried to weaponize that doubt. Henry returned with his attorney on speakerphone. The financial records are being preserved. Police want copies of the emails and maintenance files. Danielle nodded. Then Margaret frowned at the screen. There's one more thing. She opened a payroll report. Danielle's name appeared beside several unexplained deductions labeled uniform damage and cash shortage. I never damaged uniforms, Danielle said. And my drawer was never short. Margaret checked the dates. These started the week after you questioned Kyle. Vincent's jaw tightened. Retaliation. Henry looked devastated. How did I miss all of this? Danielle turned to him. Because the system depended on employees convincing one manager that another manager was doing something wrong. And when the manager didn't listen, she continued, we had nowhere else to go. He nodded slowly. Then that changes. Danielle looked at him. Not because you feel guilty tonight. Because someone needs it 6 months from now when nobody important is watching. Vincent's eyes stayed on her. Then Henry's phone rang. He answered, listened, and went pale. What? Vincent asked. Henry lowered the phone. Police searched Kyle's car. Danielle's stomach tightened. And Henry looked directly at her. They found a folder with your name on it. Vincent became still. What was inside? Henry swallowed. Photographs of Danielle leaving the clinic. Copies of her work schedule. Her address. Danielle's face lost color. Margaret reached for her hand. Vincent didn't move closer. He asked, very carefully, was there anything else? Henry looked at the notes he had written. A printed message. What did it say? Henry's voice dropped. If she talks tomorrow, make sure she never works in Chicago again. Danielle stared at the floor. The humiliation over a chair had never been about whether she could sit. Danielle didn't cry when Henry finished reading the message. It looked like calculation. Does Kyle know the police found the folder? She asked. Henry shook his head. Not yet. Good. Vincent studied her carefully. Why is that good? Danielle turned. Because if he thinks nobody found it, he may still believe whatever he planned is working. Margaret tightened her grip on Danielle's hand. You're not going home alone tonight. She shouldn't go home at all until the police advise her, Henry said. Danielle nodded. This time she didn't argue. Courage meant refusing to let danger make every decision. Vincent's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, then stepped aside to answer. I had someone check Vanguard maintenance through public business records. Danielle raised an eyebrow. Someone? An accountant? That sounds disappointingly legal. I'm trying something new. Despite everything, she smiled. Vincent placed a printed report on the table. Vanguard Maintenance had received payments from 3 restaurants besides Bellini's. All were connected through the same hospitality group. Henry stared at the names. These are my properties, Margaret whispered. Then Bellini's wasn't the only place. Henry contacted his attorney again. Within an hour, records from the other restaurants were being secured. The pattern repeated. Repair complaints closed without work, inflated invoices, payroll deductions, unexplained cash shortages. At another restaurant, a dishwasher named Marcus Reed had reported a damaged freezer door 6 months earlier. The repair was marked completed. 2 weeks later, the door fell and injured his shoulder. What happened to him? Danielle asked. Henry searched the personnel record. His face tightened. He was terminated. For what? Repeated complaints and poor attitude. Danielle closed her eyes. The same method. Ignore danger, then discredit the person who complains. Vincent's voice became quiet. Find Marcus. By morning, investigators had enough documentation to widen the inquiry. Her attorney was present. Margaret attended as a witness. The restaurant's counsel joined remotely. Danielle brought copies of everything she had saved. Vincent did not enter the meeting. When Danielle asked why, he answered, because this should not become true only because I'm standing beside you. Something warm shifted in her chest. He was learning when protection meant stepping closer, and when it meant stepping away. 2 hours later, Danielle emerged exhausted but steady. Vincent was waiting across the lobby with coffee. How did it go? They listened. Good. After lawyers made them. Still counts. She accepted the cup. Marcus is coming in this afternoon. Henry found him. Yes. He kept photographs of the freezer and copies of his complaints. Danielle looked at the dining room. Then this was never just my story. It rarely is. She studied him. You sound like you've learned that before. Something guarded entered Vincent's eyes. A long time ago, someone working for my father told the truth about a dangerous decision. Nobody listened because he was a driver. Danielle waited. Vincent continued. There was an accident afterward. My father survived. The driver didn't. And that changed you. Vincent looked away. Not enough. Danielle understood the answer. Margaret hurried toward them carrying a tablet. Marcus sent the original photographs. Danielle examined them. One showed the broken freezer hinge. Another showed an email chain. The final image made her stop breathing. Vincent, he looked over her shoulder. At the bottom of Marcus's termination authorization was Stephen Cole's signature. But beside it was another approval. Kyle Brennan. Danielle's expression hardened. They fired him together. And there are 4 more former employees with similar records. Vincent looked at Henry's office. Then they need to be contacted. Danielle shook her head. Not by management. Vincent understood immediately. Independent investigator. Exactly. Margaret smiled faintly. Then Henry emerged holding an envelope. Danielle, this came from Kyle's attorney. Vincent's face hardened. Don't open it without counsel. Danielle agreed. Minutes later, her attorney joined them and opened the letter. It contained an offer. Kyle would provide complete financial records and identify everyone involved if Danielle signed a statement saying her injury had been accidental and unrelated to neglected maintenance. Henry looked disgusted. Margaret whispered, "He's bargaining with the truth." Danielle read the final page twice. Then she placed it on the table. "Tell him no." Her attorney nodded. Even if his records could help, Danielle's eyes remained steady. The records can be investigated without buying them with someone else's silence. Vincent watched her in complete stillness. Danielle pushed the letter away. If justice requires me to lie about what happened, then it isn't justice. Nobody answered. Across the lobby, morning sunlight finally broke through the rain. By noon, the story had moved beyond one restaurant, one damaged shelf, and one woman everyone had doubted. An independent investigator began contacting former employees across Henry Wallace's hospitality group. Marcus Reed arrived carrying a worn folder beneath his arm, his injured shoulder still lower than the other. Danielle met him in a private conference room with attorneys present. "They told me I was difficult," Marcus said. "After a while, I started wondering if they were right." Danielle understood that wound. "They called me unreliable." Marcus gave a tired smile. "Looks like they had a vocabulary." One by one, other workers came forward. A cook had reported exposed wiring. A hostess had complained about a loose stair rail. A dishwasher had documented a leaking electrical outlet. Their complaints had disappeared into the same system Stephen and Kyle controlled. The pattern was undeniable. Henry sat at the end of the table listening as every failure of his company became impossible to excuse. Vincent remained outside. Danielle had asked him to. Vincent understood. By late afternoon, Henry announced that every property would undergo independent safety inspections. The company would reimburse improper payroll deductions, establish an outside reporting hotline, and fund medical reviews for workers injured after ignored maintenance complaints. Danielle listened without smiling. And the people who were fired after reporting problems? Henry paused. Their cases will be independently reviewed. Including Marcus? Including everyone. Marcus lowered his head, emotion tightening his face. Danielle reached across the table and touched his hand. She had entered Bellini's wanting permission to stand. Now others were being heard too. "You look tired," he said when Danielle emerged. "That's because I'm tired." "Fair. You expected me to say something inspirational?" "I was hoping." She laughed softly, then winced as the movement aggravated her bruising. Vincent's expression changed. "Do you need medical attention?" "I need to follow the instructions I already received." "Which means?" Danielle gave him a look. "That part is still private." Vincent raised both hands. Understood. He had never demanded her medical report or treated his help as permission to cross her boundaries. "Why did you help me?" she asked. "At first, because everyone was demanding an explanation from someone who was clearly afraid to give one. And after that, he was silent for a moment. Because I recognized what happens when powerful people decide inconvenience matters more than truth." Danielle studied him. "You mean your father's driver?" "His name was Samuel. He warned my father that one of his cars had a steering problem. My father accused him of trying to avoid work." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Samuel drove it anyway because refusing my father wasn't something employees did." Danielle's expression softened. "And he died?" "Yes." Vincent looked at her. "I spent years telling myself I was different from my father because I remembered Samuel. But remembering someone isn't the same as learning from them." "Last night," Vincent continued, "when everyone told you to sit, I realized how easily the same cruelty changes clothes. Sometimes it isn't shouting. Sometimes it's deciding someone else's pain must make sense to you before it deserves respect." Danielle's eyes glistened. "Samuel deserved someone to believe him. So did you." Danielle touched Vincent's wrist. Then Henry approached carrying a sealed document. "The preliminary audit is back. Danielle opened it with her attorney present. The estimated theft exceeded $400,000 across multiple properties. Investigators had also confirmed that repair payments had repeatedly been diverted to Vanguard maintenance. Stephen and Kyle now faced an expanding investigation based on financial records, attempted evidence destruction, and employee complaints. But one finding mattered more to Danielle than the number. The storage shelf that injured her had been officially classified as requiring urgent replacement 6 weeks before it collapsed. The repair had been approved. The money had been paid. The work had never happened. Danielle stared at the page. Tears came, because she should never have needed this much proof. Margaret wrapped her arms around her carefully. Marcus stood nearby. Henry lowered his eyes. They knew, she whispered. Yes. They knew it was dangerous. Yes. Danielle wiped her cheeks. Then make sure everyone knows that part. Henry looked up. We will. Not my medical details. Not my body. Not why sitting hurt. Her voice strengthened. Tell them the truth that actually matters. Workers reported a danger. Management ignored them. Someone got hurt. That is exactly what we'll say. Danielle exhaled slowly. That evening, Bellini's remained closed for inspection. What happens now, he asked. Now they fix what they should have fixed before anyone got hurt. Danielle glanced at him. And then I come back. He looked surprised. You want to? I like my job. She smiled faintly. I just wanted to deserve the people doing it. Vincent looked at her with something warmer than admiration. You know, most people who meet me eventually ask for something. Danielle raised an eyebrow. I did ask for something. What? She looked directly at him. For everyone to stop telling me to sit. Vincent laughed, a quiet, genuine sound. 6 months later, Danielle Brooks walked into Bellini's and stopped beside the same service station where everyone had once demanded that she sit. The chair was still there. The damaged shelving was gone. Independent inspectors had reviewed every Wallace Hospitality property. Electrical systems had been repaired, kitchen equipment replaced, and maintenance requests now entered a system no single manager could erase. Employees could report safety concerns through an independent hotline, and every complaint generated a record workers could track themselves. Danielle had insisted on that last part. People shouldn't need someone powerful standing nearby before the truth matters, she had told Henry. He remembered. Marcus Reed remembered too. After an independent review found that his termination followed repeated safety complaints, he received compensation and an offer to return. Marcus declined the job but accepted something more important to him, a written acknowledgement that he had told the truth. Stephen and Kyle faced legal consequences through the justice system. Danielle never celebrated their downfall. She had wanted accountability, not suffering. Bellini's reopened under Margaret Ellis, now general manager. Danielle returned after recovering, but not to carry trays. Henry offered her a newly created employee safety liaison position alongside her regular hospitality work, with training, authority to escalate complaints independently, and one condition Danielle demanded herself. If the system only works because I'm here, then we failed again. So a committee of hourly employees shared oversight. A familiar man waited at a corner table. You're late. Danielle raised an eyebrow. You're complaining to the woman who made a Mafia boss wait 20 minutes. I'm reconsidering my reputation. She smiled and sat comfortably across from him. The ordinary movement mattered. Vincent didn't mention it. He poured her water. Their friendship had grown over the months. Coffee after meetings, conversations about Samuel, arguments about responsibility, and long evenings in which Vincent learned that protecting someone didn't mean controlling what happened next. Danielle learned that regret only mattered when it became change. I did something today, Vincent said. That sentence sounds dangerous. Legal. Slightly less dangerous. He slid a document across the table. Vincent had established a workplace safety fund in Samuel's name, administered independently, supporting employees who lost income after reporting hazardous conditions. Danielle read the page twice. No Moretti name? Samuel's story shouldn't become an advertisement for mine. Her eyes softened. You learned. I had an irritating teacher. She sounds wonderful. Vincent laughed. On the wall behind her hung a small framed statement containing no photograph of Danielle and no dramatic account of her injury. Danielle had refused both. Instead, it read, listen before you judge. Repair before someone gets hurt. Report without fear. Beneath it were the names of employees who had helped redesign the safety program. Danielle's was only one among many. They passed the old service station. Danielle stopped. That's where you first noticed me. Vincent shook his head. No. I noticed you before that. She looked surprised. When, months earlier, you served dinner to an elderly man who couldn't afford everything he ordered. You removed something from his bill and paid it yourself. Danielle stared at him. You saw that? I notice more than people think. Apparently. Vincent looked at the chair. But that night was when I realized noticing isn't enough. Danielle understood. Compassion without action was still silence. Vincent opened the restaurant door. Cold Chicago air moved between them. Dinner tomorrow? He asked. Danielle smiled. Are you asking or issuing an order? Asking. I'm improving. 7:30. Vincent hesitated. And Danielle? I don't mean a meeting. Her smile softened. I know. I've spent 6 months making sure what I feel isn't gratitude because you changed the way I see things. And it isn't gratitude. For once, the feared Mafia boss looked uncertain. Danielle stepped closer. Good. Vincent searched her face. May I kiss you? You're definitely improving. She met him halfway. The kiss was gentle and brief, built from months of trust rather than urgency. When they parted, Danielle smiled. 7:30. Don't be late. I wouldn't dare. She stepped onto the sidewalk, then turned back. Vincent. Yes. Samuel would probably be proud. Vincent's expression softened. You can't know that. No, Danielle smiled. But you can keep giving him reasons. She walked into the evening, and Vincent remained beneath the doorway light watching her go. In the end, Danielle never needed their pity. She needed them to listen.